Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Conversation with Black Cannabis Entrepreneurs webinar. I'm Christina Delicio, and I work in the Economic Opportunity and Development Division for CDD. In our division, we offer many resources for small business owners, including grants, technical assistance, free trainings, and direct one-on-one assistance. A quick Google search for Economic Development Cambridge pulls up our website, which can also be found at cambridge.gov/CDD/Economic Opportunity and Development. A very quick housekeeping about how the webinar will work. We are officially recording right now. Attendees are muted and don't have video enabled. It's just one of the features that's built in of Zoom, so we don't have that available at the moment. Q&A does work and the chat feature works. I'll be monitoring both the Q&A and the chat so that while the conversation is going on, folks can talk to each other comfortably, and I'll either raise my hand or alert Allison if there's a question that has come up that we can sort of nicely slot into the conversation, and certainly get to any questions at the end. Today, we are thrilled to have local Black cannabis entrepreneurs Marcus Johnson Smith of Kush Groove and Richard Harding of Green Soul Organics. Green Soul Organics is in Central Square, and Kush Groove is on Mount Auburn Avenue near the Belmont line. Today's webinar is part of the city's celebration of Black Business Month. I'm joined tonight by my colleague Allison Allen, who is the Senior Economic Development Manager, and I'm going to kick it over to her to share more about Black Business Month and to get us officially started on our conversation. So thank you very much, all.
Thank you, Christina. Yes, Allison Allen, Senior Economic Development Manager for the Economic Opportunity and Development Division. I think that we're towards the end of National Black Business Month, and this will close out the month for us. We started with the kickoff event at Starlight Square in Central, and we followed up with a conversation on becoming a certified business in order to obtain contracts with large institutions. And we are now having this conversation, which I think is really exciting, an exciting opportunity for folks to get, hear. I feel like there are so many questions. Everybody wants to know about cannabis, but nobody wants to ask questions about it. So I'm super excited about this. And we can get started. I know Christina's going to help monitor the chat and let us know if there are any questions. And I guess let's just start. Introduce yourselves and your business. Like, how do you sell? What's your 90-second pitch on your business? Marcus, you want to start?
Sure. Thank you all. Thank to the City of Cambridge, Allison, Christina. The City of Cambridge has been great. My name is Marcus Johnson Smith. I am the co-founder, co-owner of Kush Groove, KG Collective. Kush Groove was founded in 2011. 2011, with a focus as a merchandise accessories brand, the focus on cannabis. And over the years, we've had 2 smoke shops in Mission Hill, Boston, and Central Square in Cambridge. We're finally getting to open our first cannabis retail location at 701 Mount Auburn Street in Cambridge, which we're really excited about. I co-own with one of my partners, Mike Perez, and we grew up in the neighborhood. So we're really excited about just being able to open our first dispensary in the neighborhood that we grew up in, next to the Star Market. That was Mike's first job when we all went to Ringe. So it's a beautiful homecoming to be able to do what we do. And we're pretty much about to open doors next month.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep. Am I up, Allison? Yeah.
Yes,
so,
please.
Thank you to all the folks who organized this, Christina and Allison particularly, as well as my co-panelist Marcus, and to the city for providing this opportunity. It's funny, I didn't know, even though I've been doing this, that it was Black Business Month, but I think that I'm grateful to be able to be in this space. My company, Green Soul, we started it probably about just before the pandemic, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We kind of jumped in as one of 122 economic empowerment applicants that was accepted by the Cannabis Commission, like my brother, Mr. Johnson and Mr. Pyers. We then began to take off in the kind of cannabis space, looking at building the brand and building the business, trying to figure out what our space was going to be. My business, Green Soul, is comprised of all minority ownership in terms of who started the company, as well as 4 of us are Cambridge Ringe and Latin graduates. So it's kind of a family affair in a way. We are one of the very few vertically integrated cannabis companies, Black cannabis companies. We may be the only one, but for sure, we're one of a very few, which means we're looking at being our own supply chain as well as going into the retail space. And I'm very excited that we'll be opening soon at 759 Mass Ave in Cambridge. And so I look forward to tonight's conversation. I'm very glad and thankful also to Allison for inviting me, as well as Christina. But I love the fact that we're going to get into talking about some of the obstacles that Marcus and I both have talked about over the time we've been trying to make this happen. But leave the complaining to the week, and we're just going to look forward to opening very soon in a neighborhood near you. So thank you.
That's right.
I mean, do you want to dive right into that? Like, because like, I could ask you what drew you to the industry and how you hope your business is going to help to the industry, but let's go. What have the challenges been?
I think the time, right? Like the time, like the real, seconds, hours, minutes, days, weeks, months, that this process really takes. When I began this process, me and Moke had the same amount of hair on our head, right? So I just haven't gotten a haircut in about 3 years now, since I got started with this process. So I think that's been one of the biggest obstacles, is just like how long the process has taken. And you just got to respect the process. It is what it is. But that's definitely one of the biggest challenges, obstacles that we face.
Yeah, I would, I'd distill it a little more. And, Marcus and I have, we've talked through this journey together. So, we're very familiar with the trials and tribulations. But what I would say to your question, Allison, is, there's some very pointed things, such as the resources that it takes to actually be in this space and be a viable business. One of the things that's very underestimated in the cannabis space is how much you have to be resourced up front just to get through the regulatory process, right? The red tape is amazing in the cannabis world. Any other business that you would start that I know of would not take this long to open under any circumstance, even a global pandemic. And so one of the things that has to change, and hopefully will change, is to look at cannabis as a business like you would anything else: a coffee shop, a barber shop, a hair salon, a restaurant. So that was one thing that was a surprise and obstacle, that it took so long, and you had to have the resources up front for lawyers and consultants and things of that nature that are very expensive, even before you ever made any money. So that was one thing that I talked about all the time when I'm in this space. I also talk about just the access to capital in general. It's not a cheap business to start anyway, but it really is tough when you have to convince sometimes an investor that, in 3 years will be profitable, and you haven't even had a shovel in the ground. I also think that, and, I love this fair city, right? I think it's the greatest place to live, work, raise a family, and do all those other great things I've been doing here. But the truth is, I do think that there was a little bit of sticker shock as it relates to cannabis coming to even a place like Cambridge, which is very liberal in many ways. I just don't think people understood the business aspect of it. Marcus and I spent hours talking about, why things are so difficult, but most of it was that people were just so cautious, and they didn't want to kind of make a mistake. But in that cautiousness, it really held us back, and the resources that we had to expend to withstand this long, arduous process, it's kind of unforgiving. I don't know if Marcus wants to speak to that, because we've talked about this ad nauseum.
Yeah, I mean, I'm about to open doors, hopefully next month. And literally, just went through POS training today, yesterday. We just finished wrapping up the security with the video and the all those things with the security company. So we'll be open, hopefully next month. And when I think about it, like it's really been damn near 4 years since we started this process. It's really going on 4 years. And it's been about since January 2009, we started paying money on that property. Like that's real money for a long time before making any business, making any money, generating any profit, or generating any business. So, to be able to withstand that, you just got to be real creative. You got to find the resources if you don't have them. Yeah.
Yeah. So one other thing I want people to keep in mind is that I believe this November, when the election time, it will be 6 years that cannabis, adult use cannabis, was the law of the land, essentially. And so one of the things that I think people don't respect is the perseverance that the minority business owners had to sort of have to stick through this. I mean, that's a long time if you think about when it went legal to, even if you look at the rollout in even Boston, the state's biggest city. I mean, it's a very slow rollout. I'd also say that, and Marcus knows this, that, the lawyers were winning, they were winning for, the entire time. We've been in this, I'm going to say, fight for, years on end. And the only ones that are getting paid are the lawyers and the architects and the consultants, right? So that in itself, if you add also the pandemic, it's a very, this was a tough one. And so that's why at the end of the day, and congratulations, Marcus, to open the next month. We'll probably open closer to the end of the year, hopefully, maybe Q1. We just got to figure out our model's a little different than everybody else's. But either way, I mean, this is a long road for people. This is not something that happened easily. And I'd lastly say that I think there were certain times within the bureaucracy, the city bureaucracy, where people were very helpful. Some of the people in legal, some of the people at US Place, CDD, Aram and Swati, they were very, very good. There was another young lady, I forgot her name, but she, I think she's running the Human Rights Commission. I mean, she was really, really helpful. And I want to thank them up front.
Yeah.
But there were other times when the process just was not advantageous to entrepreneurs, right? And so you had a situation where now in a pandemic, and I'll just use our company's thing, on March 3rd or so of the year of the pandemic, we were supposed to be setting up for our, planning board meeting and all those meetings that happened, which should have taken about, 60 days. We ended up getting put on the sidelines for like 7 months. And then we end up doing a Zoom anyway to get the cannabis license. So these are things that happen. And when you get into these spaces, you also are, as Marcus knows, you're trying to convince investors that you have a, sellable business. And it's just a very, very tough thing. We lucked up and found someone, and we're able to, maintain a major majority of our company for a nice number, but it was a valuation on potential, right? We never sold a gram of cannabis. We had no physical plant that was open, but we were able to do that. And I don't think that some of the other folks that have not yet, got to where Marcus and I and others are, I just don't think they've been able to figure it out. And so I'm going to lean on you all as I try to help some of them who are in my space, Allison and Christina, to really try to think about what we can do collectively to help others to come behind Kush Groove and Green Soul and Western Ave and Yamba and the other folks that have kind of persevered.
Yeah, facts. No, and thank you, Mo, for really sharing the detail of what that experience is. Because it's you don't see that on the surface. You really don't.
Yeah, that's I'm I'm new to the division, so I feel like I can say things and not get in trouble because I don't know them yet, but that does seem like a common theme to be timeliness in processes. As chair of the BIPOC Business Advisory Committee, that's part, we've heard that there as well. What can you get a little bit more specific about maybe what the city can do? I know that cities and towns are restricted by state and federal regulations,
Mhm.
but what are some of the things other, whether systems level or even more practical could be?
Yeah. So
Any thoughts?
no, I'll just give you just a few. So I think that some of the stuff is built in. So even the stage from all of the local approvals. So that's, in my case, I had to go to the Central Square Business. So, the business organization, whatever that's called. I had to go to obviously the planning board. All of those kind of city boards had to kind of check off the boxes. But, and then when you get to that point where you're there, the community host agreement process it just takes time, right? But we have a 78,000 square foot grow facility in Fitchburg, Mass, and it probably took us a month to get the host community agreement. Now we'll still have to do some other stuff in terms of getting ready to actually open when we're there. But Marcus will tell you, once you have that host community agreement, now investors are taking you serious, right? It's a whole different ballgame. This is no longer a dream. You are now lined up where someone has sanctioned the fact that you will at some point be able to sort of open up your business. And so, streamlining that process, as well as really helping the entrepreneur really find even some of the physical spaces. I mean, Marcus talked about paying rent in his spot for however long, and we've been doing the same. But the real key is that you can't even get the spots. And when you get the spots, sometimes there's a predatory nature to that, right? The same spot, I'm pretty sure that I know that was a hair salon before it's now going to be retrofit into a dispensary. Bet everything in your bank account that we're paying much more rent than they ever paid.
Facts.
So that's just like an example.
Yeah.
I don't know, Marcus, I'm sure you have your own.
Yeah, no, I mean, we call that the weed tax. We know what that
Exactly.
is, right?
Exactly.
And that's just the nature of the business. I think, or what I would say is, the city of Cambridge has been like the blueprint of how a city could be the most helpful. I've pursued licenses in 4 cities. I ended up getting them in 3. So I have really different experiences with city departments in every different city that I got licensed in. And I will say the city of Cambridge, without a doubt, has been the most positive. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on the city of Cambridge call. But no, Christina, like you've been the best, hands down. I want to say this and scream this out loud. You are like the model, city department person, like, who's been super helpful through this process with us.
Thank you, Marcus. You're gonna make me cry.
No, and I mean, this is serious stuff, right? But again, like to your point of like, what can a city do? I truly think the city of Cambridge has kind of been like the model of what a city can be and what it should be, as far as the process, as far as the outreach, as far as the interest in equity for cannabis entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
think-
Yeah. No, so, and I want to give a few shout outs too, just because we're here. Jennifer Matthews was great to my group. I already talked about Swati and as well as, let's just be fair, Lou DiPasquale, the former city manager, was very supportive of our businesses. I think how the city has to approach this is, and Allison, this is something that I know you'll be good at, is just what is support, right? Each business, Marcus will tell you this, each business in different phases of this journey need different types of support.
Yeah.
So one of the things you have to do is figure out, who is it that needs actual capital? I'm safe to say now, I'm glad now, right now, money's not our issue, right? That's just, we're blessed in that way. Money is not our issue for our entire project at this stage of the game. Similarly, I'm sure there's somebody that money is their issue. For other folks, it'll be the legal representation, the technical assistance and consultant. We were got into a jam similar to what I'm sure Christina's doing at the time. Christina, I don't know what you were doing. I don't think you were doing cannabis, but when, Jennifer Matthews helped us, we had a big issue with sort of our application and our stuff, that we were trying to submit around the HCA stuff. So I think that one of the things is to be in touch with business folks and kind of almost in a case management way, think about their journey and where they have to get to the finish line, and then figure out where you can be helpful and what you can offer them that's real. I mean, one of the things that, we were fortunate to do is that because of the pandemic, people really worked with us who were in our circle, right? People were like, look, we know you're on pause. We get it. We're not going to let anything kind of fly, and, we'll kind of bill you later for it. That was a big deal, but that's a relationship thing. So there's times when maybe the city can step in and bridge that gap and be that kind of support system. I think about other little things that, will be disputed later, but, when in our HCA, I think, and Marcus is probably the same, it's like, we have to pay some like $30,000 for something, right?
The bike
for like a bike something. And we don't want to have the bike conversation tonight because, my dear friend Allison is all over the billboards and she's an avid biker and I respect her. But the truth is, you wouldn't do that for any other business. You would never tell Starbucks that they have to have 30,000 for a bike, anything. You wouldn't tell them they have to have 30,000 for anything, right? So once again, you can't have the most well-run, most well-resourced municipal city in Massachusetts doing this to small business owners. It's just unfair on its face, right? In my particular store in Cambridge Square, I mean, one of the arguments we're having is that they want me to put a bike rack in the store. I mean, I have 1,500 square feet. There's no room for the bike rack, as an example, right? It's just not possible.
It's not possible.
And the architects are on my back about it, but there's a lot of different things that, and I just call it's the weed tax in the cannabis bias that you just would not do with any other business. You would not have this conversation with any other business around these things that seem to be minor, but they're really obstacles. I mean, who says, right? We haven't made a dime yet off of cannabis. Who says we just have $30,000 to pay to the most well-resourced city in America? It doesn't make sense. So if we're speaking honest about it, it's really removing the stigma around the flower, the plant, and cannabis, and just treating us as we're any other business. Trust and believe this. Marcus will tell you this. The state's not letting anybody get away with anything. The Cannabis Commission got your back. You don't got to worry. You can sit back and chill out. They are going to be on us in an unbelievable way. And that pressure is enormous and it's profound. And it has everything to do with your viability in this cannabis space.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
So I guess there are new changes announced. You brought up the Cannabis Commission. Are there any new changes, requirements, things that you're excited about or that you might be a little concerned about? Anything to add there?
Well, I think, we're probably both super excited that there's some money that we can access through this new bill. At this point, cannabis businesses are like glorified convenience stores. So once they become operational, the glorification kind of dissolves, right? So at the end of the day, what we really need is that capital and that money to help us to resource our business or reimburse almost, all the costs that we've put into the business over the last 3-4 years. The other pieces in the bill, they're not as exciting. I'll be honest, right? Because at this point, we just want to get open. We want to run the business. We want to just get to the basics. A lot of this conversation really brings in a whole lot of other elements that to some degree get away from the business, right? As Moki was saying, it's a business. there's finances attached to it, and we should just treat it like any other business, and we shouldn't have this perception of the business that it's got to be different because of the nature of the product that's being sold. You know, the business model is the same as alcohol, the same as, you know, burgers and fries for the most part. It's the same as, you know, going to grab a drink at a bar. And we got to treat it like that.
Yeah, I think that is at the core of kind of this conversation, that I think that, and I said this earlier, people being so overly cautious, it kind of threw to the wind good business practices a lot of the times. There's certain things that just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
I would also agree with Marcus that for what it's worth, I think the city of Cambridge did okay. They did well. You know, when we had to engage with them, I don't have any bad taste in my mouth. But I surely would, if we could do it again, I would have looked in a collaborative nature to look at some more of that kind of startup funding across the board once it was decided that you were a viable candidate. I think Marcus is onto something there for sure. But ultimately, I think you have to, when you can, understand that this space, for all the things we've talked about in this short time, you know, this space is not going to unfortunately be for everybody at the level that Marcus and I are at, right? Everybody's just not going to be able to own a store. Now, that does not mean that people can't be part of the emerging industry in many other ways. I was talking to a young lady who grew up in North Cambridge, who I'm trying to help right now, who wants to get into the testing aspect of it, you know, so that, right, as an example. So there's many other ancillary businesses that, you know, will jump off of this cannabis kind of retail store. And even through the cultivation, there's all of these other spaces that people can get involved and be viable business people and make profits doing different things. It could be delivery, it could be testing, it could be, you know, not millions, but there's a lot of things that cannabis, a lot of doors that cannabis opens. I think the other piece is really understanding that, you know, for all of us opening these businesses, you know, we don't know what's behind the door, right? We got it all. We've been working. I've been up. Markets have been up, we've been all up. But if you ask even the folks that open their door, there's always something, right, that you didn't expect to happen. And so there's a little bit of grace period that has to be afforded the new businesses to kind of get up on their feet. And I'm real big in that because, you know, a lot of, you know, the old cliche, you know, most businesses aren't profitable in the first 5 years, right? I'm hoping that doesn't happen, but I'm just saying you can't say cannabis is like a normal business because we know it has its different aspects. But the truth is there's some business principles that will happen to cannabis businesses, right? You know, everything's not going to go perfectly. And so I think that we should think outside the box and learn as we go along. And I think, you know, folks like you all at CDD and, you know, Allison, in your new position, you're uniquely position to be able to watch and learn with us because it's still new in some ways. I don't think any of the Cambridge's recreational ones, I don't think even none of them have been open a year yet. And then people will fall in line over the next year and people will be open until, at least in Central Square, we'll be boxing around each other because everybody will be open. But then, you know, you have Marcus and some other folks that are in other parts that are still gonna, you know, be part of the cannabis ecosystem. So we have to learn some things from each other as we open at whatever pace we open, but I'm sure there are going to be many more lessons as we get started and get off the ground.
I mean, one thing to add too, to Mogi's point about like the normalization of cannabis business, cannabis culture in our society, that this new bill is doing, and it's addressing it through the tax, the removal of the tax restrictions that were on it around, you know, just expensing regular business deductions at any, you know, ice cream store or bar or nightclub would be able to expense. So that's one step in the right direction, I think, as well as the fund that's in the bill.
So I guess I think, you know, Black leadership is really important in this space. And I'm wondering what you're thinking about, what you would ask of yourself as Black leaders or others in this realm to kind of play a leadership role in it. Like I'm saying, I think even right now, participating in this conversation, you guys have become leaders in this space, because I haven't seen this, heard this conversation happen before. So how maybe do you think, is there, aside from locally maybe, is there even Black leadership in this space? I don't know that I could point to a Jesse Jackson for marijuana. Who y'all got? Snoop, I heard Poppy got a line now.
Well, let me say this, right? Like, and again, it really goes back, and I'm really happy, Moke, that you brought up this idea and this need to push cannabis like into this normal realm, right? Because like cannabis needs to just be a regular thing. You know what I mean? And I feel like we push cannabis too far to the right when we just need to keep it as a regular business. I'm kind of, just reviewing your question again. Repeat.
No, I hear. No, I hear you. It kind of feels like you're saying you don't need a Jesse Jackson of marijuana because you just want it to be a kind of a
we
regular
just want a business,
industry,
right? And yeah, to what I was getting at is like, it's tough to have the responsibility to be a leader and to just want to be in business. I have other businesses. I don't want to be a leader in I have a tea business, right? I don't want or have a desire to be a leader, a social leader in the tea space. But we're kind of just positioned to be leaders when, sometimes you're not asked to hold the weight of what's in that backpack, right? And so, I gotta give all the credit to Mo, because I think if there's been a Jesse Jackson for leadership for cannabis, is Mo got my vote. You know what I'm saying? And again, I think it's really tough to just want to be in business, but also have to be a leader. I think it's really tough, and to some degree for me, it's emotional because it's like, I just want to be in business. I just want to have a career. I just want to, I started my business because I wanted to do this to have fun and make money and make a career to just have fun. The leadership stuff, it kind of just comes with it. It's not really what I signed up for. You just got to do it. But I just want to, start a business to be in business,
Yeah. I mean, one thing I'll give Marcus, he knows we have had many conversations. You still owe me at Viale a little spot over there, one of them little cocktails. But Marcus used to always say to me, and I remember when I knew he was going to be in the space, but when I first kind of had, we were having serious conversations, Marcus used to just say, man, I just want to open up and sell weed. He used to say that like at every end of the conversation. Like he was very, very focused in on that. And I understood it. I took a little different tack. It's just who I am. And I was sort of advocating because I think I had a different understanding of what this would look like, the obstacles as it related to what was going on. This goes to the moratorium that we fought for and other things. And so I never ever held it against Marcus that because he was always consistent. He said, Moke, I just want to do this and I've been preparing to do this. And I can understand that. To your question, Allison, it is tough to be trying to, in a competitive space, remain viable and competitive. This is a competition. Ultimately, that's what business is. And also accept the role of kind of an advocate and leader, because some of that stuff, it takes a lot of time and treasure. I spent far more nights at City Hall advocating for this moratorium than I ever thought I would, just trying to have a small little 1,600 square foot cannabis shop in Central Square. I just never knew that that's what it was going to be. For us, though, we took it a little personal. We always took the road that we wanted to be able to leave the door open for people to come behind us. I always thought it was unfair that only 122 businesses were deemed economic empowerment viable by the Cannabis Commission. Nothing to do with anybody on the call, anybody in the audience. I just thought it was unfair because it essentially meant that the system, which by the way, we won the golden ticket like Willy Wonka, so I'm not crying, but it didn't allow for the people behind us to ever really jump in the space. I don't know if Marcus remembers this, but I knew from the gate that literally the same 1, 2, 3, 4 players that are playing, they're going to be playing in the recreational space, non-medical, just recreational. I knew we were going to figure it out one way or another. It unfortunately took much more acrimony than I would have ever wanted, but I knew because they were all viable companies, meaning that they knew what they were doing, they had the potential to be financed, and they were in the right position. And so this is one of those things where people have to understand that this is not selling nickel bags on the corner, right? This is not mindless. This is a very intense, very complex, very expensive endeavor to be a cannabis operator in Massachusetts, period, no matter where you're at. And so for me, my advocacy around the equity in cannabis was derived from one very simple place. I believe when they opened in Colorado, and whatever year that was, I think there were 400 licenses given. I think there were 1 or 2 given a minority entrepreneur in the entire Colorado experiment. I didn't like that. And I knew that Massachusetts soon would follow suit if there weren't things that unfortunately happened slowly, like this stuff that's happened on Beacon Hill now. I mean, that's 3 years too late in some ways because a lot of people have moved on to other things. So for me, I always want to make sure that there's a space for minority entrepreneurs. For me, I think it's important to understand the plight of minority entrepreneurs. And lastly, let's just be fair to this. This is a rich white man's game, cannabis. That's what it is. And so, for people like us to break that sort of glass ceiling, it's a different type of leveling up on a business level than any other business that I know. Even to open a liquor store, I believe it can't be as hard as this. My last point would be that, one of the things that I think Marcus and I, we've always kind of remained cool throughout whatever the fights were going on, but you do have to kind of have, we kind of have our own kind of fraternity, so to speak, our own kind of, we should be able to have our own support system amongst us. And I don't think that we really have that really strongly. I mean, some of us talk, some of us don't, but we definitely need to figure out a way to be communicating about our lessons and being and supporting each other. And I think that I learned this in real estate. Not that I'm a big real estate mogul, but a lot of the real estate guys like in Central Square, like they're always on the same page. You know what I mean? Like they always figure it out. They always have this space to be able to talk about their interest, which is Central Square, because they own a lot of property. And so we need to create that same space in cannabis with the minority owners in Central Square and beyond. I mean, I'm not just saying Central Square, but anybody that's going to be a viable cannabis operator, we need to have our own kind of support system, because I think because we're so different and we were treated so different, I think collectively we're more powerful, because when this stuff falls, we're all going to agree on mostly the same things. It's going to be the same deal. Marcus doesn't like the 30 grand in his HCA. I don't like it. I'm pretty sure Sean doesn't like it. I'm pretty sure Dennis hates it. So these are the things that keep us together. And so we need to figure that out a little better, Allison. Quite frankly, I don't think that we're on the same page around understanding our collective plight.
I want to touch on the leadership thing too, right? Because I think there's different type of leaders and there's different type of leadership, right? Like when you asked the question, you kind of connotated it with a Jesse Jackson, right? This caricature of what Jesse Jackson looks like, right? And to me, when I process what leadership and what a leader looks like, that's not necessarily the plate of food I want to eat, right? But there's grassroots leadership that takes place in this industry that's as powerful, as impactful as the caricature of the Jesse Jackson, right? And I think about the fact that we have ownership that's going to reflect the workforce, right? When you go to the restaurants in Boston on the Seaport and I see the brothers that look like me serving the tables, but the ownership don't reflect that, right? And so for me, for Moke to have operations that we own, we reflect the staff that we look like, it's a different culture that we're able to create. It's a different vibration and inspiration that we're able to create. It's a different career pathway that we're able to open up for people that have skills that can be applicable in this industry, but they ain't never had a chance to apply their skills in other spaces, right? And so when that's what that grassroots leadership looks like to me, and that's what I get inspired by, the fact that I can go into my space, connect with my workforce, build a culture of love, family around what we're doing, and do all the other things that are important. Like I said, the career pathways that we're building, the opportunities that people can do, the skills that they're developing so that they can go on to do something else. That sort of leadership's important too.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I mean, I once said, and I stand on this, that look, I hope to, when this is all said and done and the smoke clears, I hope that I can say and look at somebody that I was able to hire and give an opportunity and be able to say literally that cannabis saved their life. It's a real, I'm true to this because I believe in it. And I think not only is the right thing to do, but I think this is a space. You got to remember, the war on drugs disproportionately affected Black and brown communities across America and systematically, in some ways, helped to destroy the viable Black family in some ways by taking their sons and daughters off the street for very, nonviolent crimes that now, in some ways, in many places, it's not even illegal, right? So that's the other kind of weird space we're in, that, you have, generations of Black men and families destroyed by the war on drugs. And now you have a lopsided scale where the major majority of the people that are making the big money are white men who, set the laws up to incarcerate these people. John Boehner, one of the most conservative members of the House, is now on the board of one of the biggest cannabis companies, right, in America, right? So you have this kind of moment of redemption. And I think Marcus is absolutely right. You can lead by staying true to the culture. I mean, one of the things I always give Marcus credit for is that through their smoke shop for years, they were kind of their own subculture around cannabis, although it wasn't selling cannabis, but they were in the culture by default through the Kush Groove brand and the stuff that they were doing. And it was almost a natural, right, for Marcus to end up opening a store in a month or two or whatever he's going to open because of the work they had put in 10 or so years ago. So one of the things that I want to make sure that when we talk about the leadership around this is trying our best when we can to give opportunities to people who, were disproportionately affected in a real negative way by the, criminality of the plant over time. And I'd also say that, one of the other things when you talk about leadership is really thinking about how you can make opportunities really possible, right? In our stores, I'm sure they're going to reflect who the ownership is, but then how do you help people and get other opportunities? The idea that, it came across that might be helpful is to, partner up with, my organization or Marcus or wherever, and really think about what could be a sort of training program that's funded for people so that, if they're not going to work at Kush Groove or Green Soul or wherever, they could go to, Somerville, Saugus, Salem. I mean, this cannabis thing, when it rolls out, I mean, in Boston, there'll be 52 stores in the first rollout, right? They're probably at like 8 now or whatever, right? So I think we need to really think about that. The other thing I'll talk about just in terms of an obstacle, and Marcus knows this, he helped me to remember this, is that the one thing about cannabis that's uniquely different and very, very difficult is that every single one of the 351 cities and towns have different regulations, different obstacles for cannabis, not for Dunkin' Donuts, not for Target, but for cannabis. So that's another really, really hard thing. Marcus will tell you later about his Brockton experience. I could tell you about my Somerville experience. Somerville was cool, don't get me wrong, but it was much different than Cambridge, which was much different than Fitchburg.
Yeah.
Marcus had Brockton and he has his other business interests, but that's the other difference, Allison, with cannabis, that it's different every city or town you go into. Literally, it could be a whole different thing. In Somerville, they have like a cannabis board. Cambridge does not. In Fitchburg, we just met with the mayor. It's like everything's so different. So when you're in a normal business, right? If we were Target or you name the business, Marshalls, we would do the same thing everywhere. It's a copycat game. You can't do that in cannabis. And that's another reason why it's much more expensive and much more difficult. Our strategy in Somerville was way different in Davis. We have a store in Davis Square, way different than the Central Square strategy. It just was. Yeah. And it wasn't because anything was, things weren't above board. It's just that Somerville wanted different things. Cambridge wanted other things. And the last point I'll just bring about this, and Marcus knows this, is that there's also, you have to be strong enough in your foundation to understand the long game. I think we did. I think others have. But look, I've eaten more great steaks in steakhouses all across Boston and Massachusetts because people wanted to come in and say, we'll give you $1 million for your company. You just become the face of the company. Yeah. It's a predatory game. You have to understand that, look, you're in this to win. You're either going to create generational wealth or you're going to get rich quick. You can choose. And so these are the other pressures that minority entrepreneurs have that I'm not sure, and they may, that other entrepreneurs in this space have. But the fact that there's no uniformed way to do business in cannabis between city to city, that's something that I think Marcus would agree is not easy if you're in this space.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, literally, I've now that I think about it, I pursued 5 cities for different licenses. Every single one of them was different. Every single process was different. And the amount of people and the level of power they perceive they have is different in every city.
Yep.
You're dealing at sometimes like most of you deal with a mayor in one town. Or I have a license in Douglas and it's like 3 people, 5 people.
Yeah.
You deal with another city of Cambridge and takes this amount of time. And again, nothing's uniform. And that's kind of unique to our experience. And to your point, Moke, about, the things that actually bring us together are the things that we don't like. Right. And I think one thing that I was just kind of thinking about this, one thing that might be able to bring us together in which the city might be able to help us with is coordinating some Scrum training for our dispensaries. Are you familiar with Scrum training?
I've heard of it. It's
it's like the agile.
Please say more. What is it?
I don't want to misspeak on trying to explain it, but I just know that it would all add a lot of capacity and value to all of our businesses for very short money if we can all get trained in Scrum and have our employees trade in Scrum. That's what I'm planning to do. And Scrum is the headquarters in the CIC over in Kendall Square, Scrum Inc. And Scrum Inc. is the secret sauce to like all the Fortune 500 companies as far as training. But I think that's something that we could, all come in agreement with, come together, and maybe the city can help that out.
I see, like a training hub-ish thing. Okay, cool. I can't believe we are like almost out of time, but I did want to ask one other question if I can find it. So it was about business to business opportunities. What are the types of ways that other entrepreneurs who want to get into the cannabis industry, but don't have the millions of dollars to go and set up their own shop. What are some of those businesses? I remember me and my girlfriends had a dream of doing the delivery service when they first said, oh, we're gonna allow all these, ancillary services, for Black women to join in. And what's the reality of that? How do you see your shop?
I think you added an amazing caveat to that. What is the reality?
Mhm.
And I think there's 2 points. One, every business model that you're looking to invest in is risky, and it should be stress tested in whatever way and measure that you stress testing a business idea, right? Like that's number one. And number two, like when you say millions of dollars to get into the cannabis industry, that's typically required for the retail, in the manufacturing, in the production. And honestly, all that's kind of sold up. I think if you're trying to pursue licenses at this point, you might be a little bit too late to the game. But I think nonetheless, if you're trying to be a cannabis entrepreneur, right, you got to really look at what are the business models that are feasible in the space, regardless of the assumption of just getting into retail.
Yeah, I think Marcus is right. When this started, we used to call it the green rush. I think the rush is like hushed down a little bit now.
Oh yeah, it's the green hush. Yeah,
Green hush, because look, I was in California a couple of weeks ago, and there's a different forecast right now for cannabis businesses as it relates to, different, and this is all in the soup of the American economy, inflation and all that other stuff. But right now, it's not as hot as it used to be. In terms of just what people are seeing as the potential. People are looking for safer kind of investments around cannabis, but we would probably qualify because we're at the end of the road. They're not as much looking at the kind of startup things like they were probably when we got into this business. So that will change too. But as you see the cannabis stuff in Eastern Mass, Boston, Cambridge, Somerville come to scale, it'll just be a different deal, right? That's just the way it is. When there's 52 stores in Boston and however many stores in Cambridge and Somerville, the scale will even this thing out. When you go to California now, the reason why it's not a big deal is because you could go from corner to corner to corner and see 6 dispensaries on Hollywood Boulevard. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is, right? So what I would say, Allison, is that there are other businesses still, and it's the same old deal. Whether you have McDonald's or you have Kush Groove or Green Soul, you need people to do marketing. You need people who are doing the advertisement stuff. Soon you're going to have this, if it works out, the consumption lounge business, which you're going to have, a more sophisticated bud tender in a lounge where you can consume cannabis, kind of in the Amsterdam coffee store thing. That'll be rolling out. The delivery is still going strong. Like I said, I was helping this girl thinking about the testing. There's the whole issue of packaging as it relates to branding and stuff. There's the brands themselves. Big Poppy just has a brand of cannabis, right? When that could be edibles, it could be flower, it could be tinctures, whatever it is. So you have to really dig deep into whatever your passion is in, and then figure out a way to get kind of connected with a Marcus or a Moki and Taba or whoever that's in the business. But there is opportunity. It's just a different opportunity now. I think Marcus is right that partially because of the way the economic empowerment system was at the Cannabis Commission, and now they've just rolled out, I think, the second cohort of the social equity group from the Cannabis Commission. I think those people are already in the positions to be able to be in the ownership place. It's going to be really hard, but not impossible, without vast resources to kind of just jump in this space. But I wouldn't dash anybody's dreams, but I think to Marcus's point, realistically, you have to find your kind of niche in this big kind of cannabis world that is cooled down a little bit right now. And it'll heat back up, trust me. But I'm just saying, in this moment, because of all the other things in the global economy, or I should say the country's economy, I think it's just a little bit cooler. From talking to different investors, it's just a cooler response. where, a year before COVID, we were the hottest thing going,
Okay. Do you guys have, either of you have any parting words? I can't believe an hour has flown by that quickly. Anything you feel is unsaid? Any parting words?
I mean, are there any questions that folks have? Because folks have sat here for an hour and listened to us. Maybe they have a question or two.
Yeah.
There was a question about the new what the actual new can law was, or you mentioned allowing having some resources available, and then some tax relief or expenses, something like that. There was some question about that. What
Yeah,
you know.
fill me in where I leave this off, Mo, but I think it's the tax relief, it's the social equity fund, it's the creation of a framework for the social consumption.
What did they do about the HCA? Are they saying you don't have to have it?
The HCA is now regulated through the CCC.
Yeah.
What is an HCA?
Host community agreement.
Oh, okay.
That's essentially the golden ticket that the municipality that you're trying to operate in says you have passed all of the local requirements, and it was a requirement to be able to get to the CCC to get your provisional license, which is your first kind of license to open, for lack of more technical understanding. But it's basically an agreement between you and the city that you're going to operate in, under what rules and stipulations you'll be able to operate. And it's, once again, unique only to cannabis. Starbucks is selling more coffee than anybody. Any dispensary that I know, and they have no HCA. They just said, we got Jennifer, your coffee's ready, your latte. But with cannabis, you got to have this big agreement. So one of the things, just to piggyback on what Marcus said, that is big probably for folks is the kind of what he called the weed taxes, that if you taking out these, extra sort of taxes and making it an easier, when you become profitable, easier to keep more of your money. I mean, when this started, Allison, you can hear the stories about, if you really want that HCA, those fire trucks are pretty rusty. Get us a couple fire trucks. Spend 180 grand on a couple fire trucks. That HCA might just be, in the mail. So one of the things that this also does is it kind of takes the cities out of at least the parents of being somewhat corrupt and kind of taxing cannabis businesses unfairly for whatever it is, right? I mean, look, at the end of the day, even if they said you had to pay the 30 grand, but you could put it to the charity that you wanted or to the cause that you wanted, I'd feel a lot better. Right now, it's feeling a little Godfather-ish, Goodfellas-ish, where, Mr. Corleone likes to see the ring kissed and the checks on time. So I just don't like that as it relates to just cannabis, because I think Marcus is right. I think that they're taxing us differently. I only harp on it because I think some of the conversations at the state level were looking at, obstacles like that. And then lastly, I think one of the big things the city might be able to do, and I think Marcus would agree, is look, that legal representation is a beast. It is a beast. If someone's really trying to get into this business, whether it's just setting up their LLC to whatever that entails, I think if the city could provide some serious, trustworthy and competent legal service, I think that would also be a major help, because that's a major expense. And it's a very specialized deal too, the cannabis legal stuff. It's not like, I mean, it's legal, but I'm saying the people that do it are like, there's a couple groups that do it and they got everybody basically, pretty much. So
I don't know if it's too late for you, Mo, but we got most of our stuff done at the law school.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that, because there's another project that I think I want to try to use them, but no, it is too late. Bills are paid. But you know, Allison should have got this job, and Christina should have invited us 4 months ago, and maybe, but now we're all set. The bills are paid. We're broke again.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, that's a big one though. The legal representation. I think and Allison, I think everybody would probably agree with that one. Like, this is not just unique to my company. Marcus will share. I think if you talk to anybody, they're like, yeah, you know, the lawyers, consultants, architects, you know, big bills.
Yeah.
Big bills.
Yeah. My next life, I'm gonna be an architect.
Yeah, for real. Serious.
Because yeah, nothing gets done without the architect getting paid.
Oh.
All right.
So
Yeah, well,
my parting words are this. Look, thank you to my brother.
Yes,
Marcus,
likewise. my brother.
Co-panelists. This was good. We haven't got together. Everybody's busy, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Thank you both. From you know, CDD staff's been great to us, as I said, my company, but thank you both tonight for giving me the opportunity. I just want to say too, you know, look, this is a great city, Cambridge, and I think that while nothing's perfect, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to be an operator in our city, and I don't think that this dream, chasing it and catching it, would be complete if I had to do it somewhere else. So I'm just very thankful for the opportunity in the city, and thankful for all of those who supported us this way. We got a little bit ways to the finish line, and you know, hopefully we can all rejoice and say we're all successful. I'm glad that, you know, we have other brothers that are Cambridge based that are being able to kind of thrive in this space and open up and take this opportunity that others unfortunately may never have. But I'm grateful to be in this space, and thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, ditto my brother's words. You know, thank you for the city for putting this all together. I'm really grateful, and I never take this for granted, that I'm able to live in the city as an adult, live in the same neighborhood I grew up in, open a business as an adult in the city I grew up in the neighborhood I grew up in. And I'm really humbled by that. So thank you.
thank you both. And anyone watching can stay tuned. We have other events coming up in order, I think, October. First of all, the Cambridge Somerville Black Business Month mixer was rescheduled. It was supposed to be this week, but it got rescheduled to September 13th in front of Ogie Gourmet Pizza in Harvard Square. That is a Black History Month, a National Black Business Month event that will happen in September. And then October is Women's Business Month and Small Business Saturday coming up after that. So stay tuned to our office and the Economic Opportunity Development Division so that we can keep these kinds of conversations and going. And we definitely want to thank both of you for sharing specifically for me, your feedback and thoughts around city processes so we can think about that, and also for your time. Christina, did you have anything to say?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to everyone. It's been an absolute joy to hear you both talk about your business. I've been working with you on the permitting end, and it's been wonderful, but it's also been great to just sit with you and listen to you talk about your businesses and what your experience has been like. I am so grateful that you both were comfortable and eager to share so openly. I have to give credit though, this whole thing was Marcus's idea. So we are indebted to Marcus for saying let's just get people together and talk about cannabis and have it be all about Black cannabis entrepreneurs. So thank you for continuing to have great ideas all the time, Marcus.
Anytime I can get an opportunity to share some knowledge and wisdom with my brother, I'll sign up for that anytime.
He's far too kind. Allison, I'm so glad I went to your event to kick this off. I would never be here, see? Gotta pick that schedule right.
Awesome. Thank you both. Have a good evening. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye.